Hello and what's up everybody, Thunderbob here, and I am back playing some Diablo 2 Resurrected. So I've been kind of off this game for a month or two, been really waiting for the patch to drop and for the ladder to start, but now that the patch is out, I am going to jump in and do some more build testing, check out some of the changes from the patch, and kind of get my plan together for the ladder release. Right now, I think I'm leaning towards trying hardcore ladder, which is something I got into years ago. I got into the 90s in hardcore before I lost my Fury Druid, and I am looking at getting back into it. I've got a couple different characters I'm considering starting ladder with, one being a Fury Druid, another being a Summon Necromancer, and Fury Druid has had some changes, so I wanted to do some testing, mess around with it, just see how effective it can be. With a couple different gear combinations on the higher end, and I'll go over the skills, the gear and build, and then we'll jump in and try to kill in player 1 and player 8 difficulty. Alright people, so here we go. Gonna show off the gear first off. First I want to show, I am going to try out one hand and a shield, grief plus storm shield. I am looking at this for a possible hardcore build, so I wanted to go with a shield option. And there was actually a change in this patch that wasn't in the PTR, that basically, normally when you block, there's like an animation that prevents you from attacking. You can get stun locked pretty easily. It's one reason that Fury Druids in particular, don't use shields too often. But the patch notes indicated that if you were attacking or taking action, that block animation would not happen, and that seems to be the case. If I'm attacking with Fury, I don't seem to be getting frozen when I'm using that shield. So I'm going to demonstrate that. And then the other weapon I'm using here is Tomb Reaver, mostly just for that crazy increased attack speed. This should be ethereal. I don't have an ethereal one on me, so it's just a normal one. So my damage is a little bit lower than it would be, but that's okay. With this gear, I should be hitting the maximum increased attack speed. I've got 170%. I believe it caps at 150 now, where it used to cap at 75%. So between the Tomb Reaver and then the rest of my gear, Jala's with a 1540, a High Lord's Wrath, a Fortitude, Playing of Hands, really good dual leech ring. This is single player with some gear I carried over from the original Diablo 2, just to be transparent here. Nosferatu coil with the increased attack speed and the lifesteal on there. Just a random ring I had laying around. Gore Riders for that crushing blow, deadly strike, open wounds, all great. These are good if you're going for Ubers. Crushing blow is really important there. You might even put on Goblin Toe in that case. And then, yeah, Storm Shield, Grief, and then these may not be optimal. I was going with it to increase my attack speed even more, as Werewolf increases attack speed. I don't have a calculator to be able to determine the exact breakpoint, so I wanted to be safe on that, and then just some ridiculous charms here. Yeah, with this, I put just enough strength for gear, just enough dexterity to be able to use Grief. I could max block to demonstrate that animation, but I didn't. You know, usually when you're going with Druid, you've got a ton of extra life from your Lycanthropy, and in a lot of cases from Oak Sage, so I find that Vitality is oftentimes more important than Dexterity and block. That's kind of a personal choice, but in this case, I went just minimum Dexterity for gear, the rest into Vitality, and look at the skills here. Nothing in Elemental. Shapeshifting, basically you need 20 in Lycanthropy, 20 in Werewolf, 20 in Fury. That's your bread and butter here. Basically 1 all the way down in the important summons, either Heart of the Wolverine or Oak Sage maxed out. And I would say these are actually maybe a little bit better to put a few points into, especially if you're playing hardcore, because now you can have all of them up as once, as you can see I'm demonstrating here. I did put my remaining points into Feral Rage. It's just a nice extra lifesteal, and for hardcore, can't have enough lifesteal. And then the last few points into Kyrian Vine, which has been buffed a bit. It actually scales a lot better now, I find, and it's good 1-point wonder, and just dumping a few extra points in there seems to be helping a little bit. but that's the basics. You can see lifesteal, mana steal, got just crazy increased attack speed. With this, plus the 74% for my attack speed, my understanding is I should be hitting the maximum attack speed, though without a calculator I'm going kind of by hearsay from the forums. But we're going to go ahead and do some murdering here. One thing I do want to mention, in my hardcore variation of this, I would probably max Oak Sage over Heart of the Wolverine. That huge life increase is, I think, better than the damage increase, especially in hardcore. That's really the only difference I would probably go with in my hardcore variation. Looks like we're going to have an Uber Diablo soon. The other thing I would mention is you could also go with like Cyclone Armor, since you can use that in shapeshifted form now. Though without the synergies, it doesn't add that much. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to do players 1, I think just through part of this run, and then I'm going to switch out to players 8 and demonstrate that with my two-hander, which does considerably more damage. And I'm doing about 14,000 damage. Forgot to show you Pride, Fortitude, Duriel's Visage, and Might on the Mercenary. So that's also substantially increasing my damage. One bad thing about Druids, of course, is no teleport. Enigma does not work in shapeshifted form, which is definitely unfortunate. There are some, you know, ups and downs with Fury Druids. So they are really good, I think, at single target damage. They can do Ubers decently well. Any of the bosses they don't have too much trouble with. But they have terrible AoE abilities unless you're going like a Windy Druid. Fury, Werewolf, Werebear, all of them are really made for like single targets or small groups. It's when you run into a lot of enemies that you start having trouble. And you also notice I ran away from that physical immune. That's another thing you have some difficulties with. There are some ways around that. You could try Rabies, you could try Fireclaw, you could throw on Reaper's Toll on your Merc, or get like an Act 5 Merc, and there's a weapon that'll help you deal with immunities as well. Man, run into all physical immune tonight, apparently. I am not decked out at all to deal with the physical immunity, so I am just going to be bypassing them. Which is easy enough. Fury Druid is not, I'd say, the best farmer in the game. You know, lacking teleport, lacking decent AoE clearing. They're a little bit limited. But they are, I feel like, one of the classes that have the highest survivability because of the really incredible life you can get between Oak Sage and your Lycanthropy. I'm going to go ahead, I've been using the Tomb Reaver, I'm going to switch to the other weapon, and just, if you see me flinching at all from the blocking animation, call it out, but I'm pretty sure you no longer have that happen while you're attacking, so I think definitely shields are a lot more usable than they used to be. And this, of course, is player 1 hell difficulty with some pretty high-end gear, and even with the Grief, which does considerably less damage. I think that sheet damage on Grief is usually bugged out. It's doing more than that, but even with Grief over the two-hander, it's fine in player 1 difficulty. Grief is one of my favorite weapons in the game. I think Druid is a fun hardcore character. They are gear reliant though, so I may end up going with the Necromancer first. My end goal with the Diablo Resurrected was to get each class into the 90s and beat hell difficulty with them, and so far I've done that with a Sorceress, with a Paladin, and with a Trap Assassin. So I've got right now a Blizzard Sorceress who's going to be changing to Hydra Orb is the plan. And I've got a Smiter Zealot who has beaten the game and has soloed Ubers at this point. And I've got a Trap Assassin who basically just beat the game. I haven't really decked her out much beyond that. So that leaves the remaining 4 classes. But I wanted to do Hardcore also. I feel like Trap Assassin, or Assassins in general... excuse me, I've got the Assassin. That leaves Amazon, Barbarian, Druid, and Necromancer. I feel like Amazon is not very well suited for Hardcore. There's probably some builds out there that work, but they're very gear reliant. And they're also a little bit, I think, a little bit less tanky. You know, they've got evade and all that stuff that works better now, but usually you're making glass cannons with Amazon, and yeah, that's not really what I'm going for in Hardcore. Barbarian, I think, can be good, but again, very, very gear reliant, and a little squishier than I'd like. And then you've got Druid and Necromancer. I think Necro is one of the best Hardcore starters. You've got lots of pets to soak up damage. You can use Bone Wall, Bone Prism. You can have your Bone Ward up. Just overall, a really good build. And then, you know, Skelemancer can basically beat the game naked. You know, between your skeletons, your mercenary, and corpse explosion, you don't really need much else. You know, I think by level 68, I've got all the skills I need to beat the game naked. And I'm going to demonstrate that in another video, actually. Alright, so that was player 1 difficulty. Okay. So I've got players 8 difficulty enabled, and I think what I'm going to do is just check out some of the new level 85 areas, maybe Arachnids Lair. I know there's very limited physical immunes usually in there. I'm going to be using the 2-hander, as the 1-hander is just a little bit slow for this area. And see how it goes. Some other thoughts on the changes. So the damage wasn't substantially increased for Werewolf. The speed, though, was changed. And the way I understand it is it's easier to hit, like, reasonable speeds with weapons that didn't work before. And then the very top-end weapons can go even faster than they could before. My understanding, and I think I'm hitting at least 4 frames per second. My understanding is with some very specific setups, 3 and maybe even 2 frames are possible. I could be getting 3 here, but I'm not very good at measuring it, to be completely honest. I kind of suck at it. It feels faster than it used to, but I also haven't run with a Fury Druid in a couple years, so I'll let people who know the math better than I do put the calculators together. But it should be easier to hit those speeds, so it gives you a lot more options on what weapons you use, and then there's the changes to shields, so shields are an option, 1-hander and a shield's an option as well. Fury, the skill was also increased in speed by, I think it's 40%. The max speed, like IAS, can impact your werewolf form. I think it's gone from like 75 to 150. So, like, overall, you can go faster. It's easier to hit the max speeds. There's more weapons that can hit good speeds. So, like, overall, it's easier to gear them up. But they're still, you know, they're not the fastest in the game. They're very much limited in AoE capabilities. They can get kind of stun locked or locked down somewhat easier than some of the classes. Their escape abilities are somewhat limited when you've transformed. But overall, I do really like this build. You know, I had a Fury Druid that I got up to 92 back in the original game, and it was the furthest I ever got in Hardcore, and when it died, I kind of like swore off Hardcore, but I'm really curious to give it another try, get as far as I can, and just have some fun with it. I think I'll probably start with the Necro, though. I think they're a little bit less gear dependent, and then based on what I find, You know, I'll make probably a Fury Druid, though I still want to make a Barbarian and an Amazon in the long run. Um, yeah, that was player 8 difficulty. Arachnid Lair went fairly fast. I mean, if you had teleport, you probably go just slightly quicker. Overall, it's a really fun build. I know this gear is pretty ridiculous, but even with middle of the road gear, it is better than it used to be. And don't expect, you know, lightning, fury, speed, or blizzard speed. It's not that, but I think for hardcore, it's a reasonable option for the latter. Um, it's a fun, like, solo self-found kind of build. Maybe not the easiest in the game, but it's satisfying. So I'll have some more videos up over the next couple of days and weeks, and when the ladder comes out, I will definitely be streaming as I attempt hardcore solo self-found for the first time in 10 years. Yeah, so I realize I haven't played as much Diablo like in the last month to two. I've really been just waiting for the patch to drop and for ladder to start. But I am definitely going to be jumping in and playing a lot more, and I appreciate everyone who has stuck with me and continues to comment and support my channel. If you've got any thoughts, any comments, please drop a line below. And if you would, please like, subscribe. And thank you for watching, everyone. Have a good night.